Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social Podcast. Today we'll be discussing another round of the UCI World Cup, the legendary Dune Cross of Koksijde, and I'm joined by Issam.
Hey everybody.
And Twan is here as well.
Hello.
Hope you guys are doing good. We watched the return of the legendary dunes of Koksijde on our TV screens today. Of course, last year it was cancelled because of the pandemic, but happy to see this one back on the calendar. It's a real classic, and Issam will tell us what happened in the men's race.
There was some rain falling down upon us in Koksijde in the 7th round of the World Cup, and the first one that was able to touch the sand of Koksijde was Hermans. There were no special moments in the sand where you would be like, well, the big difference are going to be made. We had a first lap crash with Van der Haar and Sweeck. Also Iserbyt and Van Kessel were involved, but no major injuries whatsoever, and the race was not really influenced by that first lap crash. But like I said, the difference were not really big in the sand, and we saw a couple of good moments from a couple of riders, but in the end it was never good enough. Aerts was having a very good day. He was actually almost the entire race running in the first three positions. And he was very eager to make up from his disappointment in Merckx Plus, where he was not able to get on the podium. Iserbyt was able to show himself up front as well, the World Cup leader. And Aerts was able to try and break away from the group. And we had a kind of a battle within the race between Aerts and Iserbyt. The others were close by, but the gap really did not come big. And towards the end of the race, the main guys that we had were Iserbyt, Aerts, Sweeck, Hermans and Van der Haar. In the penultimate lap, Iserbyt was able to put the others under pressure. Aerts and Hermans took initiative in the pursuit in the last lap with close by Laurens Sweeck, but they will never be able to come closer to Iserbyt, and he will be taking the first place in Koksijde. And second place was actually not for Aerts or Hermans, but for Laurens Sweeck, who was behind them. And third place went to Twan and Issam.
So Eli Iserbyt took the win here in Koksijde. Based on this season, it's not entirely a surprise, but Iserbyt isn't known to be the big sand specialist, whilst here in Koksijde we find parkour with a lot of sand. So are you guys surprised that Iserbyt took the win today?
I personally was surprised in a way. Obviously in the race we have seen, or in the season we have seen a couple of races where in the sand he didn't make a lot of mistakes. I can recall Neil very well, where he was able to actually make the difference in descent rather than last year and even the year before, where he was not even able to, descent for him was like a big, trouble point in a way. And just this season, he made a huge step in descent, and Koksijde is very, very difficult to do in a way because it's just so long, descent sections, and you have to really just focus, and it's a combination of power and getting really through the path that you have. But he just nailed it, and he was just able to every time do the right thing. And I think in Koksijde it's very, very, important to be able to do the right stuff at the right moments. And if you just have an hiccup, try to control it very well. Like step off your bike at the right moments to make sure that you don't lose that much speed. And he was just doing all that very perfectly. So in a way, it was a surprise, but it's just also very hard work, which now comes to play.
And I think it's also a very mature ride by Iserbyt again, just waiting a bit and holding off, and then just unleashing a few great sand sections, finally able to put them together, and all was good.
I do think that the weather played a role in Iserbyt's win today, because I saw on the Hendrickx dune, that massive dune which is slightly off camber, that was the only real pure sand section today, and I saw Iserbyt struggle there, especially compared to Aerts, who was flying through that section. Same can be said for Hermans and Sweeck. Iserbyt was struggling there. Because of the rain, the sand got thicker and more packed together, more compact, making it less loose, giving the advantage more to the people who have the power, because you need to put down the power to go through this thick type of sand. And Iserbyt had that power. You could especially see this on the uphill sand sections. There were lots of uphill dunes, and Iserbyt really had the advantage there. He was able to break away from Aerts there, especially in the third to last lap and second to last lap, where he was able to ride them whilst others needed to run. That's really where Iserbyt made the difference today. He had the power advantage, not necessarily the technique advantage. That was more on his chasers. Because of the weather, I feel like specialists, especially like Sweeck, couldn't really get into their element because the sand was not that hard today. And because of the rain as well, as I said, these tracks that were formed in the sand were easier to remain there, which then again benefits the people who can push through these trails instead of the riders who have their advantages when there's no trails and you need to ride loose through the stand. So I think that was what made the difference here for Iserbyt today. However, I would also like to talk a bit about that parcours because there have been some additions here. Again, an extra bit of sand added after the Hendrickx dune, which forced everybody to hop off. Also, a few other sand dunes have been added over the past years. Do you guys think that the parcours has become too hard by adding all these sections?
I personally think that it is becoming a little bit harder, but I think that also makes this race more and more special because we don't really have a lot of dune races on a very high level. So I think that running section after the Hendrickx dune is not really, in my opinion, doesn't really add a lot, but it adds something, I guess. Running sections are also part of the cyclocross, so they have to be in it as well. I think the race overall, it's getting harder and harder, but I think they found a really good balance. So I don't think they should make it more harder than it is already, but I don't particularly think that they should be easing it off a little bit and make sure that there is a little bit less sand, because I think the combination is good, and they found, in my opinion, a bit of a good midway of sand and also the a bit easier stuff.
Yeah, I think it's becoming a bit too hard. I like the parcours of the 2012 World Championships a bit better. Maybe it's a bit of nostalgia, but I did like that better. I thought it was balanced better. Now it's more becoming for power, whilst personally I would love to see Koksijde be for the sand specialist, like we had with Paul Hendrickx, who was a sand specialist, being able to take the world title there in 1994, if I recall correctly. That's more what I associate Koksijde with. Now it's becoming more and more, adding this Zonhoven type run-up dune after the start. I like the older dune there, which was rideable. I like that better, but in a way, like, tracks evolved. The running part, in my opinion, was just added to have a slow section where they can show the sponsors more. But I don't think that was necessary to add that. The Hendrickx dune was always special because sometimes you could pull through, other times you needed to hop off. But we'll need to do with that. Iserbyt was able to manage this parcours the best, but we should maybe look back. It didn't really... I mean, he won comfortably, or at least that's how it looked. But we shouldn't forget that it wasn't... He was very close to being crashed out of the race by Twan and Issam. Twan, what happened there?
Twan and Aerts dove up on the inside in a bit more of an open corner than Iserbyt did it yesterday to Aerts, and nearly put him into the barrier, kind of. It was a bit of a more risky move, maybe, it made for some entertainment, and I assume Iserbyt was a bit shocked after that.
Yeah, that was a tricky corner already. In the first half, there were some crashes. Van der Haar crashed there, and Van Kessel as well, because they hit the barrier. And the lap after, they had opened it a bit. I don't know if the spectators did it or the organization. I expect the last. But Iserbyt was like kind of in this open gap, and like the barriers came back. The Aerts was having none of it. He was, personally, I think Aerts was a bit done with Iserbyt. Already in the race, there was some frustration between those two. Of course, yesterday the frustration. In Neil, if we look back, also frustration. I think Aerts was done and was thinking, nah, I'm having none of it today. What you did yesterday, I'll give you a bit of payback.
Yeah, maybe felt like a bit of a move of we don't solve it behind the mic, but we'll solve it tomorrow in the cross again.
Well, luckily nobody crashed there. Would be a shame. I think it would have been a very nasty crash as well, because it would have been a frontal impact on those barriers. So that wouldn't have been nice to see, but luckily they managed to both go unscathed there. Twan and Issam once again did a lot of work and then was dropped. Pretty similar race actually, if we compare it to yesterday. Same riders at the front with the absence of Michael van Toerenhout, who is injured at the moment. So yeah, could Twan and Issam have done it differently today, Issam?
Yeah, in my opinion, he could have, again, maybe just save a little bit more for the last few laps, because I have a feeling that he was trying a lot mid-race, which in my opinion cost him a little bit in the end. I think especially the fact that he became third and not second, that Laurens Sweeck was able to beat him in the end. Sweeck is obviously very good in the sand, but nevertheless, I have a feeling that if he was saving up a little bit for the last lap, he would have been able to capitalize on that, because we know if Aerts is good, his last lap will be good as well. So it could have been a little bit different, but in the end I think he should be very happy with a podium, because that is at least better than being fourth.
Yeah, I agree. Again, Aerts doing a lot of work, and it's kind of the same with him and Hermans week after week. In the beginning of the race, somebody has a fast start. In the middle of the race, Hermans and Aerts tire each other, and then in the final part of the race, one or two Pauwels riders steam past them, and they either end second or third or fourth, or sometimes they're even more unlucky and end a bit further down. In terms of Aerts, I did really like how he was plowing through the Herrijgers Dune. Thought that looked fantastic. He did put a lot of pressure on Iserbyt there. I think that was good, but eventually, if we look when was the decision made in the race, it was just Iserbyt applying the pressure for a very, very, very long time, and that eventually led to just Aerts cracking. Iserbyt just clearly the strongest in terms of his condition now. I think maybe Laurens Sweeck once again could have had a shot, but for Sweeck, I don't know. He never really looked to get into his element in this race.
Yeah, not really. Yeah, I think especially at races like this, you can ride him up. And I thought personally that we, even with the fact that it was raining before the race and the mud, that it was gonna be a little bit tougher, and that it would suit more the likes like Sweeck, because there's not a lot of climbing, there's a lot of sand, some mud, So I think that was going to suit him a little bit more. In the end, obviously, second place is not a bad result, but over the whole of a race, I don't think he can be very, very happy. And he, the reason that the race was so close, I think, was because the difference could be not really made in the sand, because, like you said, it takes a lot of power now with the sand being a little bit tougher to get through. But then Sweeck was just in the right position at the right moment and was able to, in the last lap, take over Hermans and Aerts, and then was just able to get second place.
Yeah, I think for Sweeck, he's kind of in the wrong team at the moment. Twan and I discussed this in our podcast of yesterday. He looks to be on his way out at Pauwels, and I think that's what he needs to get more opportunities. He looks to be a bit stuck behind a very strong Eli Iserbyt. Let's run down our entire top 10 then. We of course had that podium of Iserbyt, Sweeck and Aerts. Then we found just off that podium Hermans ahead of two Dutch riders Van der Haar and Van Kessel. Then a duo of Deschamps, Hens-Maas, Baestaens and Soete. Top 10 is rounded off by Mees Hendrickx and Niels van der Putten. Let's talk about the duo of Hens-Maas first. Vincent Baestaens. Somebody has to give this guy a contract, man. He was running in fourth in the beginning of the race, then eventually dropped off the leaders group, still finishes seventh. I mean, come on, this guy's having the season of his career. No one is willing to give him a contract. I just don't understand it once again that his contract isn't extended.
And this guy is just a top 10 cyclocross rider at the moment, and the fact that he is going to be out of contract for the moment, it's quite ridiculous.
They look to be preferring their other riders. Tom Meeuwse got an extension far outside of the top 10 today, been lacking behind Baestaens the entire season. Lander Looks also looking to stay with the team for a couple of years, and the 20th today. Daan Soete did put in a solid result though for Hens-Maas, ending 8th after a puncture. Issam, any comments on his race?
Yeah, I mean, a strong race, I would say. I think especially with a puncture at such a parcours as this one, the legs will always fill up very, very easily, and with a puncture, it goes, it is even harder to get around. So I think in general, being in 8th place is very good. But about the Baestaens situation, I think it's a bit pathetic that he's not getting his contract extended at Hens-Maas, and I hope for him that he can get a place. I think there are definitely some teams that will be looking to get him. And I hope that the only reason why they are not extending his contract is because of budget issues or because they want to get a bigger rider in. But, we don't know. There's nothing set yet. And, let's hope for Baestaens he can find a new team in the future.
That would be understandable if they weren't paying Tom Meeuwse. It's very weird. The whole situation, it doesn't really scream like Baestaens asking for an incredible pay rise. It's just very weird.
Certainly weird, but if he keeps up this type of performances, there's no way teams can go around him. I mean, if we look at another rider who put in a great result today, Mees Hendrickx, he was out of contract in the 2019-2020 season, rode the beginning of the 2020 season in a black kit following no contract extension. He kept on riding, and let his results speak. He got third at the Under-23 World Championships. Well, the teams came, they signed him, and now he's at Eco Krelan, and today he got a very good performance, 9th place.
Yeah, really that performance that, just signifies how big of a talent he is. Has been solid for quite a few years, but that one big result to follow up his performance in the U23 with Dubendorf, it never quite came, but here it is. Great performance, great day for him.
Yeah, very good performance, was running in 7th at some point, eventually ended 9th, probably because his normal races are 50 minutes and he's a bit younger, has less volume, but still 9th, very good. I might be a bit less surprised than you guys, but yeah, following his win last week in Tabor and his bad luck but good form the weeks before, I knew a poor performance like this was coming. I didn't expect it necessarily to be top 10 today, but like with Hendrickx, I always had the feeling, okay, this guy is incredibly talented. He has a lot of bad luck, but someday everything will come out, and that was today, and he ends in the top 10, just as Twan said, showing the talent he has. So very good result by him, and I think like if we look at the riders he beats, first Under-23 rider beats Niels van der Putten, another solid result by him. And if we just look just outside of the top 10, some other names like Toon van der Bos as well, which are certainly good names to be in front of. Let's talk about our women's race then. That one was also a pretty eventful one. Twan, tell us.
It was a especially good start by Shirin van Anrooy. She got through the dunes quite well at the start, but we would have 6 other Dutch women with her. And in the second and third lap, Worst and Betsema would be taking off and leaving the others behind, with then Worst going on to drop Betsema as well in the 4th and 5th lap, and taking her first victory in a long time ahead of Denise Betsema, and third for world champion Lucinda Brand.
Here once again the sand specialist gets beaten by somebody who has the better power, or at least that's how I saw it. Annemarie Worst certainly the strongest today, and I think that all comes back to what I said about the weather and the sand being thicker and more on the power. If I looked at how Betsema went through the sand, it was very elegant. It looked styleful. She was correcting herself with her body weight. Then if I look at Worst, Worst was on a charge today. Worst was thinking in her head, okay, I'm going to win, I'm going to win, I'm going to win. And she was just flying through the Herrijgers dune. She was putting down the power, bam, bam, bam. And she just cut through the sand, whereas Betsema was more easygoing on her technique, whereas Worst, by the looks of it today, just by far was the strongest. That's at least how I saw it, and it's good to see her back on the top step of that podium. Her last win was the Koppenberg Cross last year.
Yeah, indeed, very good impression. I think she was just the strongest today. And like you said, I think Betsema was having her moments in the sand, but just, in the end, it took her so much. It takes a lot of power as well to get through. It wasn't only the technique. And even with the women, obviously there was no rain. The rain started falling after the women's race, and in my opinion, even without that rain, the sand was still thick, and it was very hard to get through. So you needed a lot of power to actually get through. And I think Worst was just on a march, very strong, and Betsema was a very, very good second.
I don't think Betsema could have done anything different today. I mean, Worst so much stronger. Usually you're always like, okay, well, perhaps Betsema could have done this or that, but today, none of it. Worst was just simply the best.
Annemarie Worst, of course, been struggling with all those injuries, and we have been seeing that it got better and better, and today is just a great day for her. I think all the back troubles behind her, and sign of hopefully good things to come, and maybe time to make up for that second place in Dubendorf.
Yeah, definitely she will be aiming for that world title in Fayetteville later this year. She's looked to have recovered fully from her back injury, so that's great news. But in a way I was surprised that with the conditions we had in the stand and these dunes which require a lot of power, that Lucinda Brand was struggling. We know that she is a good runner and has a lot of power. Where did it go wrong for Lucinda Brand today?
At the start. No, but I think it was just not really her day. You could see she normally struggles a little bit at the start. She was lucky in a way that the pace dropped a little bit after the first lap, or at least in the first lap, so she was able to come back. But it was, in my opinion, was quite clear from the beginning that it was going to be a compromise. That she was not in her best possible shape. Also, the passages through the sand, some were a little bit better than others, but she got stuck quite a lot in a way, and that's a bit of a shame because I think she worked on it quite a while, and also in the World Championships with the running parts, but also in the sand, she was having her moments. She was pretty good, so I think it was just not really her day, and the shape was just not really there. And then to get third place, I think she can be very content with that.
Yeah, I think there was just slightly too many of those instances where she just tried to ride on a little bit too long and just few technical mistakes, and it's really unfortunate because like those pile up quite quickly in a course like this.
Yeah, I noticed she was especially too late with dismounting the bike. She was always like a fraction or a full second too late, which resulted in her coming to a standstill. So that was something that was wrong today for her, and for the rest, I think it just took her some time to get into a rhythm in the race. Because in the final parts of the race, she was pretty much matching the lap times of the leaders. Worst was putting in the fastest lap in the lap that she attacked, but Brand was only 2 or 3 seconds slower that lap. But yeah, Twan and Issam also said it in the broadcast that Brand was making too many mistakes today, and I think that shows. But I would like to come back a bit on that start. We did see indeed that Brand and Betsema were kind of behind, and we've seen that a bit more throughout the past weeks. How do you guys see this? The likes of Brand, Betsema, somewhat the older riders they suffer a bit in the start. Well, we see this new young generation. Today it was Van Anrooy, Van Empel, also always with a fast start. We also have Puk Pieters who is starting rapid, Capablanca Vash also out there. How do you guys see that these young riders are always starting faster? Are they more aggressive, or is this simply their riding style, more like we see with Van der Poel and Van Aert?
I think it's more just the style of rider that they are. I think Betsema and Brand are just a bit more engines, and the starts just aren't always amazing. And these young guns, of course, got some of the nice accelerations over them.
I think as well what plays a role is obviously the age, because I think the older the rider becomes, obviously it takes away a little bit of that edge of having that raw edge of being able to start very fast. I think as well as a little bit of experience, because it's not always necessary in a parkour to be starting that fast, because it may cost you in the end, which we also have seen with the younger women and also with the under 23 men. And I think which can play a role in this is the warming up. I mean, especially if you're younger, you don't really need depends on the rider, obviously, but over the range of the younger riders, they don't really need to do very wide. They don't need to put in a lot of time to warm up. And I think the older riders, the little bit more experienced riders, they have to warm up a little bit more with a little bit more intensity. So I think that can also play a little role with this. And but it doesn't harm them, it doesn't hurt them, because in the end they have the experience and they can then come back and then take the race from there.
Yeah, age without a doubt plays a role in this. We heard it in our Hendrickx Haussler podcast that the older you get, the more you turn into a diesel. However, their diesel power at this moment does edge the sprint power of the youngsters. Van Anrooy 4th today. Also a good result by Van Empel, who ended 6th, and Pieters 7th. I thought it was interesting to see these riders because, I mean, Pieters was suffering, especially on the Herrijgers June. Same story as for Brand, making too many mistakes, having the power but not exactly the rhythm and the confidence. But Van Empel and Van Anrooy, I really liked how these riders went through the sand. I mean, it was so stylish to look at. We're correcting themselves, but it was especially for Van Anrooy, it was a perfect combination of power and coordination. I really loved to see that, and I think with Van Anrooy in the next couple of years, we could have another very, very good sand specialist. And in a less extent, this also goes for Van Empel, because she also had some flawless passages through the sand.
I mean, when the first lap was happening and I saw Van Anrooy go in the beginning, I was like, well, that's this might actually end up on the podium. But obviously then you have to realize that they're still young and that it's very hard for them to be able to maintain that over the course of a whole race. But like you said, I think the way they went through the sand is like they have done it for years. Well, they have not done it, but it's, I think what Hendrickx, the guy that won the World Championships in '94 in Koksijde, I think what he also mentioned very well, and he's a specialist in the sand, is it's more about the feeling than anything else. It's like if some just have it and some don't, and I think they just have it in a way. They have this balance when they go through the sand, and it's just you're kind of born with, and then you can learn it like an Iserbyt, and you can perfect it in a way. But there are not a lot that really can train on it. There are a lot that will never be good at the sand, and there's just some that have that talent from the first time they go on the sand, that they know what to do with it.
I definitely think both riders can be satisfied with their results. Let's look at the entire top 10. 9 Dutch riders in the first 9 positions, which is a record, both men and female category, for a World Cup. We had the win of Annemarie Worst ahead of Denise Betsema, Lucinda Brandt, Sherin van Androoy, Celine Del Carmen, Alvarado, Fem van Empel. Then in 7th place, Puck Pieters ahead of Inge van der Heijden and Jara Kastelein. 10th place for Clara Honsinger. Let's touch here up on the race of Alvarado a bit. She ends 5th here. She had a puncture. What do you guys think she could have done without that puncture? Because it was very unfortunate.
Yeah, I think without the puncture, it would obviously be a little bit different, because it was at a terrible moment in a way, because Vorst at that moment was putting a little bit more pressure on. But I liked the way she was riding. To be honest, it was a very good day for her, and I think only a lot of plus can be taken from this race. But yeah, obviously, I think without that puncture, who knows? Maybe she was a little bit closer to the podium. I think definitely the way she was riding through the sand, I think she could have beaten Brandt. But you never know. It's always, if that happened, then you can maybe, and it's very hard to say. But I think definitely that she would have been closer to a 3rd place.
Definitely agree on that one. Hasn't been a season for Alvarado so far. Still a decent result today. Another name in the top 10. I mean, we can't let Honsinger go unmentioned. Same story for her, recovering after a bad start. Only rider in the top 10 who isn't Dutch, but for once, Honsinger didn't even have the worst start, because if we look at Arzoufi, she ended 13th, but what was that start for Arzoufi? She was outside of the top 40, and then to ride back to 13th, I mean, still okay, but what was that start? I mean, come on, if we think Honsinger has tough starts, what was this then?
Most certainly something that isn't quite an asset, is it? A great recovery, right, as you said, but having to recover from that far back, I don't know exactly which position she's starting in, but it can't have been like that far back. It's just completely terrible, and she should of course be looking to fix that, and hopefully it's just a one-off.
Yeah, hopefully the Italian champion can improve from that. She did eventually beat Perrine Clausel. Clausel's putting in solid performances over the last couple of weeks. She's switching around with her sister. Maybe they've secretly switched around, I don't know. But last year, Perrine Clausel was putting in the good performances. This year, at the beginning of the year, it was Helene Clausel who surprised us with some very solid performance, especially over in the States. Now Perrine is back at it. Certainly interesting to see these sisters compete with each other.
Would be the story of the season, and I think the story of cyclocross in general for a while, if they would actually switch. But I don't think that is playing. But obviously it's good to see as well other nations coming up. But it's, in my opinion, it's obviously not really great to see that 9 Dutch women are in the first 9 places, to be honest. But it is what it is, and especially these type of races are very good for the Belgium and Dutch riders, because they are a little bit more experienced with the sand and the dunes. It's something that the others don't really have. I mean, in France, I cannot really recall a dune race. The same goes for Italy. So I think these are just very typical races for the Dutch and Dutch women, and they experience it a lot. At least 1 or 2 races a season they have to do this. So yeah, that it doesn't surprise me that this is the race where it happens, but it's of course a bit of a shame.
Yeah, I agree on that. However, there was a French rider who did do very good. Annemarie Worst was running in the top 10 for a while, eventually dropped to 16th position, but it was still a solid race by her. I mean, maybe a bit overambitious at the start, but it was still good to see her up there, and just another French rider. I think the French have a pretty talented generation come through, but, well, if we look at it, it's not great in terms of the parkour that they find here. I think we've had it for Koksijde then. However, there was also racing in Hittnau today, in Switzerland that was. And in the men's race, there was Laurens Sweeck who took the win there ahead of Bertolini and Dario Lillo. But in fourth place, our podcast guest of previously this week, Hendrickx Haussler, ended in fourth. He was very happy with his result and he has a short word for us on his race.
Oh, I couldn't believe it. I could even, I had a really bad start. And also I think that's just something I need to work on, and also in training that I can go deeper and harder in the start. It took me a while to come back, but then once I got my rhythm I felt really good. And I could even attack on the climb in the last 2 laps. It was really, really good. I was so happy. So happy. I almost had tears in my eyes. Of course it's only a small race, but still, to be able to be there and mix it up in the final was absolutely amazing. I was so happy. Really, really happy.
Well, guys, shortly on this result of Hendrickx Haussler, what do you guys think? Fourth place? I personally think it's a very, very good result by him.
It's a really encouraging result. Of course, not the strongest fields, but certainly competing with riders that I think most of the time were like slightly ahead of him in the pecking order. And yeah, it's just great to see him actually find the front of the race.
You know, the field was not the strongest, but I think it's definitely a solid field. I mean, guys he left behind in terms of the, Twan and Issam and also Dorigoni. Those are not guys that are, they can also win races in a way. So, in my opinion, I think it's definitely very promising. And in his journey, to become a better cyclocross rider, I think this is what you kind of need. Those smaller races where you can fight for victory, fight for podiums. And then from there you can build yourself to a greater rider. And that's what we see with a lot of guys, that when they are able to be good in these type of races, they can be able to also bring the fight up for those top 20s and top 30s in the bigger races. And I think if you only do the bigger races, it's obviously not going to be amazing for the rider in general, because then you're gonna be a little bit demotivated and stuff. I think now fighting for victory, you have to also learn to ride for victory. So, I very happy for him and very happy that he gets the goods out of it. And, that podium will come.
Definitely, I will shortly give the results here of the women's race. It was the junior rider Monique Halter who took the win there. And she was able to beat Gina Barumi and Rebecca Garibaldi. And that was our podium there. Of course, plenty of other racing as well in Europe, but we won't go past all those results. Main focus was on Koksijde. Twan and Issam, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me on.
Yes, thanks for hosting.
Later this week, we'll be back with a podcast about developing talent in the USA and the UK. How does that go? What challenges does that bring? Certainly an interesting talk with the director of Cyclocross of USA Cycling and the organizer of the Clanfield Cyclocross in the UK. Certainly interesting to give that one a listen, and thank you guys for tuning into this episode. And as said, we will be back. Goodbye.
Bye.